I wanted to take a bit of time to talk about motivation and how I find motivation to be a complete mystery because it can sometimes be the case that you're just unstoppable and you're incredibly motivated to the point of, you don't want to go to bed because if you're going to bed, you're not doing the thing that you're incredibly motivated about. And for me, that would normally be a project of some sort of app development, web development type project. And throughout my life, I've had so many moments where all I can think about during the day, during the evening, during the night when I should be sleeping, all I can think about is this project that I can envisage and I just want to see it through to completion. And you just have this intense hyper focus where nothing else around you matters. All you can do is work towards this end goal of getting something done. But then equally, that motivation, which is like really high, can just eventually just drop off a cliff. And I think what normally happens is it gets to the point where you're at the end of the project. You started with all the fun stuff, the creative stuff, the bits you actually really enjoy, the creation process and all that. And then you get to the bit that needs a few little loose ends tying up that comparatively are super straightforward. But in my head, they're kind of like a blocker. And that might be um, coming up with terms and conditions or a user policy, that kind of thing. Maybe even just building the supporting website that you kind of feel like needs to be there, but it's not really that interesting. Um, and you just don't want to do that bit. So motivation just drops off a cliff. And so many times in the past, a project that had real legs, you've done all the hard work, you really thoroughly enjoyed doing it. It's just gone nowhere and it's been parked and bookshelved and replaced with another motivation where you just suddenly get a new spark of an idea and, oh, that'll be fun. Let's get going on that. Um, and yeah, it's a mystery because sometimes you just have no motivation for a really long time. And then out of the blue, something sparks in your brain. Suddenly it's go time. And I don't know why. I mean, probably it's ADHD and I don't know if it's related to dopamine. I don't know. But it's very inconsistent. Sometimes you just are unstoppable. You're in this white heat frenzy of like, need to get this thing done. And so for me, for example, I'll give you examples. I've probably got dozens and dozens and dozens of examples, but the ones that spring to mind would be I once wrote a stock checking website. So for popular Christmas products that are they're hard to get hold of, it's all the rage. All the kids want it for Christmas. Everyone's frantically trying to find somewhere to get this thing to not disappoint the kids. And often they're things that come in and out of stock all of the time. Say, for example, a new Nintendo Switch or something. There's going to be different places online to buy those, all of which have inventory coming in and out of stock. And the website I built tracked the inventory of a load of websites around the UK. And you could basically go on the website and turn on alerts so that the moment something comes into stock, you're notified it's back in. So, say, for example, Argos might have the Nintendo Switch back in, you would get notified. And I spent a lot of effort, time, loved doing it. It's fully enjoyable. Building this stock checker app slash website. All worked lovely. Tested it plenty and all worked and functioned exactly as I had imagined. Looked great as well. Had a great domain. I think it was stockcheckers.co.uk. And it got to the bit where it just needed a bit of a promotion. Got to get the word out there so people know this thing even exists. And at that point, I was like, no, I'm not very good at that. I'm not don't enjoy that. So all that happened was I built this website. It was live. It's not live anymore. And nobody ever knew about it because I didn't tell anyone about it. And I think that's all it needed, people to know it existed, and they probably would have shared it about. And yeah, it's just odd how you can go through all of that effort for something just to see it basically gather dust. And it was all because you didn't have the motivation to see it through to the very end, the bits that you just don't find that interesting. And that's just one example of so many. Um, and what I would say is, I did one time that I can really think of, I forced myself through the difficulty of like the bits that I don't enjoy that just need doing in order to launch this thing. And it was the app I created back in 2016 that did really well. So it just goes to show that if you can somehow force yourself through like the bits that you just don't feel motivated for, it can really pay off. And part of me is like gutted that throughout my life, there's been so many occasions where I didn't force myself through. And who knows where those projects could have been now if I'd have just done that. But I can't be too hard on myself because I know to get my app in 2016 launched, it was a monumental effort to get through those boring tasks. Um, but yeah, it's such a mystery as to like why do you suddenly get motivated out of nowhere? And here's an example of that. I was in this room working on a project during the day, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just had this idea pop into my head. I was literally mid programming on something completely different that had my full attention. But then out of nowhere, it was like a light bulb ding. Um, Although when people call it a light bulb moment, I think normally they've come up with a really great idea. But anyway, I had this idea, and suddenly all my attention went on this idea. Never mind the fact I was mid programming, and suddenly I became extremely motivated, thinking, I won't give the full details just in case I eventually do something with it. But as it stands at the moment, it's kind of done nothing. I registered some domains. But I just had this idea for a plushie. So of all the random things, I've never once been into plushies. I've never tried to design one. I don't think I've ever really tried to come up with a character that I could use in a story and all this kind of thing. But I had this idea just spark into my head. And I was like, I bet that would look cool as a plushie. So I looked up on online, has anyone done this plushie before? No. Suddenly the ideas, even though I felt suddenly really motivated, the fact that no one else has done it, wow, I think, research this a bit more. So I did, and I kept going, registered the domains and everything, spoke to the AI and said, I've got this idea for a character. This is what it would look like. Da-da. And between us, we kind of came up with what the silhouette of the character would look like to see if it could be very distinguishable from other characters. And we turned that silhouette into a mock-up of what the plushie would look like. And at the end, I was like, wow, this is amazing. This plushie looks so awesome with loads of customizable features. So you could do a whole range of different ones. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at quotes for how much would it cost to get this made into like a sample? And then what would it cost to buy in bulk that sample as a finished product? And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, this could be amazing. But then I suddenly remembered, yeah, if I do this, I'm going to end up with a box full of awesome plushes. And then I'm going to have the job of trying to get them out there to people. How do I do that part? And all of a sudden, my motivation, which was like skyrocketed out of nowhere, suddenly became to like, I wouldn't say parachute down. I think it was a parachute down initially. And then when I thought about it some more, it was like a seagull had flown through the parachute and it suddenly went, and then I just parked it and I've never looked at it since. But it's so weird how out of nowhere that just ding, and then suddenly you're suddenly on it. Never mind the stuff I was in the middle of. And yeah, so it's just crazy how that happens. I don't understand it. I'm sure it must be something ADHD related, dopamine seeking. I don't know. Then I don't know, because surely your brain's always dopamine seeking when you don't have it. And then it's not always the case that you suddenly get an idea that you're very immediately passionate about. So an idea that came to my head the other day, well, it didn't really come to my head actually. I was at a party, which I did record a video about and I didn't actually put out there in the end. But basically, it was my friend's 40th birthday. He was having a family meal at a pub near where I live. And then people were joining for drinks afterwards. So I'd been invited to that. It was a surprise for my friend. Um, and yeah, I got invited to that. I turned up half an hour late. Although I think technically I wasn't really late. Just the drinks started at a specific time onwards. And then I turned up half an hour after it started. So yeah, I don't think we can call me late on that. But anyway, so while I was there, my friend's family's all there who I haven't seen for a long time. One of them had moved to America. They were back now. And we were talking about children and what their jobs might be in the future with AI and stuff, taking over jobs potentially, and what jobs might they go into when they're older. And I started talking about all the jobs that I wanted to do when I was a kid, of which there was so many. For example, when I was about 5 years old, I thought I really wanted to be a vet. And I recall the reason I decided actually I don't want to be a vet is because the people I was saying this to told me, well, do you want to be a vet if you have to deal with sick animals? I know you love cats, but you're not going to see cats all the time. What if someone brought in a tarantula because the tarantula needed seeing to? And I was like, well, I just wouldn't do tarantulas. And they're like, hate spiders. And they're like, okay, well, you might not be able to pick and choose the animals that come in. Like if someone brings in their injured pet, if that's a tarantula, presumably you'd have to know how to deal with that. And I was like, well, I wouldn't be able to. So I feel like the people around me were very demotivating at something that perhaps they should have encouraged. They also said, sometimes people bring their pets in, including cats, and they would need to be put down. Would you be able to handle that? And I was like, So I would have to kill the cat. And I don't think they necessarily agreed that I'd be killing it, but they put that idea in that, it's not all just playing with pets. But when you're working as a vet, you're often just dealing with sick animals. And I think at some point, shortly after that, kind of the idea of being a vet kind of disappeared. But other things that I wanted to be when I was a kid, I wanted to be a stuntman at one point, an actor. When I wanted to be an actor, I was way, way younger. I think eventually I started to feel very self-conscious about stuff. And being an actor, although now I think, that would be good, but I think it would be good if I wasn't a very self-conscious person with requiring lots of eyes on you when you're doing your acting. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to be an animator. Did actually study that at university, got a degree in computer animation, but never did anything with it. What else? There's loads of things I wanted to be. Did I say stuntman already? Wanted to be a stuntman. I'm sure every kid at some point wants to be a stuntman, though. Sadly, though, that's a job AI and general technology these days. I guess there's less need for stuntmen. Not how stuntmen were back when I wanted to be one. I think the moment I decided I wanted to be a stuntman, I was on a holiday with my family in America, and we were at Universal Studios, I think, and there was a little show where there was a guy jumping from a building, and they showed in the studio what that looked like. And basically, I think it was a guy on a harness jumping into like a big pool of foam blocks. So basically, you're not going to hurt yourself when you land. All these foam things will break your fall, but you're also harnessed up so you don't fall too fast or something. But it showed on the video clip exactly what that looks like. And it looked so real. And I thought, that's amazing. I'd love to do that. Never really pursued it. But for a short time, I was like, what can I do to be a stuntman? This is back when I was a kid. So that would involve like rigging up some stunts at home off the sofa and stuff. Nothing big. Why am I talking about this? I can't even remember what I was saying about jobs. Oh, yeah. No. Yeah. Because it kind of goes back to what I was saying about motivation. So one job I've always wanted to do, and it's never really left me. I've always wanted to do it. And all the other things I've wanted to do, I kind of, at some point, decided, nah, I don't want to do that. I've always wanted to be a voiceover person. Even though I don't know, I feel like I've got a fairly, not monotone voice, but like it can get that way. I think if I talk too much, it starts to the expression starts to disappear. It goes quite flat. Um, but I've always wanted to do voiceovers. And so I'm at my friend's party. That's what I was saying, wasn't I? I'm at my friend's party talking about jobs and how I wanted to be a voiceover person. And I commented that I'd actually still love to do that today. Um, it's just something I've always thought I would be quite good at because I like to do voices, character voices of like inanimate objects and things. And believe it or not, I'm not going to do it on this thing, but I've got quite a good range in my voice for doing different pitches and different voices. I can do a really good mouse, um, very high pitch, no problem there. And it's just something I thought I would love to do that, to stand in a booth. So no one's really got their eyes on you. They're watching something else, like an animated character, but they're getting your voice come through. And I remember being at Disneyland Paris once, and they had a little feature at one of the places there where you could play a video clip from a Disney movie, and you'd hold the button down and you'd do your voiceover on top of the stuff that had no voice on it. And then afterwards, it would play it back. And after doing that, I was like, this is what I've always wanted to do. And I just thought, "Oh, I wish I could do that, but I didn't know how to start." So anyway, I'm telling all this to my friend's sister at this party, and then she said, "It's funny you should say that because the other day on Facebook, she had this something in her feed from a lady called I think it's Alice Spockett, who is a voiceover artist, and she's got a 21-day series, all free, just encouraging people to get into audiobook narration and how to go about doing it, what equipment you need, where to sign up for jobs and audition for jobs, and what the general process is, including editing and mastering." So I've already got the equipment to do all of this stuff. And having a real want to do this kind of thing, but just not knowing how to start, I watched this lady's 21-day series, and it was a really good series, couple of minutes per day for 21 days. I think it'd already been running, so I got to watch everything all in one hit. And as a result, I've ended up buying myself a portable sound booth studio. So this house is quite small, so I couldn't exactly take up a whole room and sound condition a room with all like the acoustic panels on the walls and things like that. So as a result, this space that I'm in now and any other room in this house isn't really suited to doing voiceovers because of the reverberation of the hard surfaces that would go back down the mic, and it wouldn't meet standards to do audiobooks. So one option is to wrap yourself in like a duvet den that you just rig up, you know, very makeshift, and record in that space because the surrounding duvets would kind of not allow reverberation of your voice. But I like to, when I get an idea in my head, I like to run with it, and I tend to want to invest money in things and buy equipment. So probably within 20 minutes of getting home from this party, started looking up this lady and her 21-day thing, watched some of the videos, which were great, and then started researching how I might be able to record in like a sound conditioned room. And suddenly I've got this spark of motivation that just couldn't do anything else except research how I'm going to go about doing this. And I found this product called a Snap Studio sound booth, I think it's called. It arrived yesterday, extremely heavy. When it's packed in the bag, it's still a pretty big bag. And I thought when I've ordered this, my ex-partner's going to probably be livid quietly to herself that I've taken up more space with stuff I didn't need. But I feel like I did need it. It's something I've wanted to do since I was like probably 8 or 9 years old. Never have, but I've always felt like I wanted to do it. And suddenly got the motivation to do it. So I've gone and done it. I've bought this sound booth that I constructed yesterday. Took me about half an hour, maybe 40 minutes to set up the first time. But I think now I've done it once, I'll be able to do it again in 15 minutes. So this Friday, I'm going to take the day to build the thing again, because I'll have the whole house to myself Friday. I'll build the sound booth, and I'm going to record an audiobook. So I'm not sure if that audiobook is going to be something I make with AI, just a short story, just to give me something to get working with. Or I might actually go straight in and do an audition, jump in at the deep end. I've had advice from someone who says, you want to practice it first, know exactly what you're doing and all this stuff. But I'm also very much of the opinion that you should just jump in at the deep end, because what have you got to lose? If you audition, they can just reject, perhaps give you reasons why, or perhaps not. But at least you're doing the thing rather than just, plan forevermore. Because I don't want to do that. I don't want to think, oh, I've got to make everything perfect. And then you never get it perfect. Nothing's ever perfect. And then you just never do it. A bit like this YouTube channel. I just jumped in and did it. And, surprisingly, I've had people subscribe and comment and say they thought the videos were helpful. So anyway, I feel like I've kind of derailed this video, which was supposed to be talking about motivation specifically. And I've just mostly talked about this one specific instance where I've just become motivated to get this sound booth. Anyway, so that's the plan. Friday, sound booth, going to record an audiobook and see where it goes. But I think even if it goes nowhere as a commercial thing, I'm going to get such enjoyment out of it. I think it will become like a real passion project type thing. My sister's already asked me in the past to record an audiobook for my niece, because she's got this thing where she can put a character on her thing, and then depending on which character it is, will play out that storybook that a family member has recorded. So when she told me about this thing, I was like, oh, I'd love to do that. And then I just forgot all about it. I'd been busy. But now I've got the sound booth thing. That's possibly what I'll do, but I wouldn't be able to put that on YouTube or anything, because it's going to be probably like a Roald Dahl book I'll read. Anyway, so yeah, example of suddenly you get this burst of motivation, although that didn't come out of nowhere, because it did come off the back of talking at this party to someone who then said, I'll go and check out the video from this Alice Spocket. Brilliant series, very much appreciated, because she wasn't trying to get money out of you. She wasn't trying to make you sign up to anything. She was just sharing her insight and how her story began. And she wanted to share it with others to see if they can improve their lives. I think she was on the brink of burnout, or in burnout, from a very stressful time in her job. And she left to try and become an audiobook person and did really well out of it. And I think she's just encouraging other people to do the same. So yeah, anyway, motivation, back to the main points. It comes out of nowhere. I don't know why. It can be so intense that you sacrifice your days, your evenings, your nighttime. So much of your time just gets poured into something, like a real hyper focus. And then your motivation is zapped. It's nil, zero, the moment you get to the bits that are boring. I would guess a neurotypical person who doesn't suffer with ADHD would just treat it mostly the same as some of the other tasks. It's just a job that needs doing, so do it. And I don't know if I'd want to trade my intense motivation for just a little bit of motivation all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you could say, okay, you can either keep your intense hyper focuses that come out of nowhere and last for some unknown amount of time, they're few and far between. But you'll be motivated to just do everything, but just not to an intense level. I don't know that I would want to give up that hyper focus state that you sometimes get, because that's when you really get stuff done. And I feel like if you just had regular, basic motivation on everything, but nothing felt intense, would I get as much done overall? I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't enjoy it as much. I don't think I'd enjoy the process. Like, I love the fact you can get so stuck into something and lose yourself in it. And I feel like when I live alone, 50% of the time without the kids, I'm going to be so able, I think, to get myself into those states. I hope. I think and I hope that will be doable. I'll be able to find those hyper-focused states more, because there'll be less external distractions that kind of give you reasons to not get into that motivated state. So I feel like I could be pretty unstoppable with the things I want to achieve. Maybe audiobooks, more app projects, and all sorts. Just do the things that need to be done and you'll be rewarded. I've had that with my 2016 app. And beyond 2016, on the same app, I've had to sort of put in a lot of work on things that just don't interest me just to keep it going because, there's new requirements come in. If you don't do, your app's going to get delisted and eventually that will peter off and people will stop using it. And even that risk isn't enough to sort of force me to do it right then and there. Normally things get left to the very last minute. And I think it's the sudden imminent threat that gives you that motivation you need. So ideally, that wouldn't be the case. You'd get on with it the moment you know it needs doing, 6 months before the deadline hits. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on motivation and how motivation shows up for you or doesn't show up. What gives you motivation? Do you ever find yourself wanting the motivation like I do, but it's just not there? Yeah, hope this was helpful. Probably isn't, but just wanted to share my thoughts on something that baffles me and has done all my life. So have a great day and try and stay motivated. Cheers.